Thank you. The theme today seems to be about love. The song I'm going to do was written by Leslie Duncan, and it's unusual because it's an Elton John hit that he didn't write. But I always liked it. I hope you enjoy it today. The words I have to say may well be simple, but they're true. Until you give your love, there's nothing more that we can do. Love is the opening door. Love is what we came here for. No one could offer you more. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? You say it's very hard to leave behind the life we knew. But there's no other way. Baby, now it's up to you. Love is the key we must turn. Truth is the flame we must burn. Freedom the lesson we must learn. Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Do you know what I mean? Have your eyes really seen? Thank you.
Wow. You know, I don't know how many times I've already said it, but it's amazing to me how I could spend a week writing a talk that I will talk about for 20 minutes, and then the musician gets to what I meant to say in 3. So thank you for that, Terry. This is our month of joy, looking at our primary value of joy. And today we're talking about the joy of Advent, which is a season of anticipation within the Christian traditions. Mostly, well, I was raised with the Catholic Church, so I assumed it was a Catholic thing. And it predates the Protestant Reformation, so I'm claiming it for the Catholics. Part of the tradition is to do an Advent wreath, which has 4 candles on the outside and 1 white candle on the inside. The 4 candles on the outside are 3 purple, 1 pink, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the one I think most people are aware of are Advent calendars. Has anyone here ever used an Advent calendar? Apparently, they didn't have this when I was a kid, but apparently you can get ones with chocolate in them now. So each time you open it up, you and all your siblings can scream and fight over whose turn it is to eat the chocolate. If you would like to avoid that, they have one with wine. Yeah, Nancy, I'm talking to you. They have one with wine. So it became tradition in my family that my mother would send us all Advent calendars to make sure we were all still being Catholic. Maybe. My mother passed 3 years ago, the weekend after Thanksgiving. And as we were cleaning out her space, we found that even with dementia, she remembered to get the Advent calendar for my brother and for us. And she had even put it in an envelope for Mike, so without even having to think about it, I knew to put the stamp on it and get it out there because it needed to be there for the beginning of Advent, which is the 4 Sundays before Christmas Day. I should check the envelope because my mother, in her wisdom, when she realized she didn't have an envelope that fit the calendar she bought, cut off pieces of the calendar. And so the debate amongst us siblings that year was, since she cut off the last few days, does that mean Christmas never came? Or we are now perpetually in the Christmas season? And it's kind of like what you gave up for Lent for us former Catholics and kind of never picked up again, like guilt. I gave up guilt for Lent one year. So that's part of the Advent magic and part of the joy of Advent is that sense of anticipation for the coming of, for some of us it was Christmas, for some of us as adults now and as very serious people, it's the Christ consciousness being fully awake in our lives. Okay, for many of us, it's still the prezzies that happen on Christmas Eve, on Christmas Day. It's the pretty lights. It's all of that anticipation, which is actually so necessary as a spiritual energy if you want to manifest. That sense of anticipation. And has December 25th ever not come for one of you? Maybe Christmas didn't happen the way you were hoping for, but that date, no matter who cuts it off the calendar, always shows up, right? That sense of anticipation is powerful. That sense of absolutely knowing that that anticipation will be fulfilled is where the power comes from. So we have wonderful examples of what we call demonstration, the fulfilled anticipation that is the same magic we see on children's faces when they come out on Christmas morning and the Christmas tree is there and lit up. Okay, on the Hallmark Channel, when the Christmas tree is lit up and nobody has to wait until somebody makes coffee. That sense of anticipation and that absolutely trusting that our anticipation, our fondest wishes, will be fulfilled. So this year we had a lot of good stuff happen. We have the land swap deal we're doing with Dr. Ascari that will actually take form next spring. I mean, yeah, we all know it's done. I've seen, we paid the lawyer. It must be done, right? We will see it in physical form and it will affect us as an everyday thing sometime in 2019. We know that we've been given some great gifts this year. We've been given a clearer sense of who we are. And seeing all of that take form is what we trust. The kids today are over at the temple. That is the demonstration of love that we started the year with. Way back in February, we said love and the expression of love between people who might not look like us or talk like us or celebrate like us. When I first came out and the temple kids had been here, I walked out and all the kids said to me was, Reverend Kathleen, we have new friends. Come meet them. So that's a demonstration of the love we started the year with. I was made aware of another demonstration or answered prayer just before service. And Andy, I'm going to ask you to come up and just really quickly tell us, because sometimes it's more important to know that this is happening all over the place than it is for you to hear it from me, who has probably Googled 5 or 10 miracles just to share with you today.
A lot of you know me, my wife Chris, and I talked to Reverend Kathleen just before service. want to really share a couple things that happened over the last few weeks. Actually, at a special service 2 weeks ago, where everyone was able to stand up and get prayer for something they needed, people prayed for a hand operation that I had, which went quite well. Thank you. Unfortunately, what started our fun the last couple of weeks was in recovery from that. In the afternoon, I had an episode where my blood pressure spiked and I suddenly couldn't speak, which got everybody very frightened. And during that procedure, right before I was transported or after I was transported to the ER downtown, Hazel reached out to Chris and asked how I was doing. And when she found out, there was more prayers coming our way, and as it turned out, it was nothing major, a drug reaction, nothing more than that. But I had the unusual experience of not being able to speak, which for me is pretty strange, and that's why Chris knew there was something wrong with me. In any case, though, we proceeded to get better, and I even went to a Tai Chi class the following Saturday morning with probably our closest friends in our community, Rose and Charlie. And Charlie, who's 76, was actually there. I hadn't seen him there before, and he was doing the movements and everything. But that evening, we got a phone call from his wife, Rose, to say that there was an ambulance on the way because Charlie had gone down with stroke-like symptoms that night. And as it turned out, he had 4 simultaneous cerebral hemorrhages, brain bleeds, that afternoon. And so it started a really difficult week for us. We reached out to them and tried to do whatever we could to support them, and by Sunday, we had another prayer treatment in, and Sally Kasner wrote us a wonderful prayer treatment, and the power of the practitioners was behind us. And by early in the week, we went down to the hospital. I sat with Charlie in the ICU for an hour or two while Chris and Rose went out for a bit, and Rose got a little respite. I didn't even know if he recognized I was in the room. There was very little eye contact. He couldn't move or walk or speak. And he was doing a little better the next day. They were looking into rehab for him, but they concluded that rehab probably wasn't necessary because he might not survive more than a couple of days in this condition. So they decided to bring him home under hospice. And in the meantime, the prayers were continuing all week. And he seemed to look happier at home and was a little more responsive. And when we visited again, I saw him get eye contact with Chris and hold her hand, and he recognized her. There was no question. I think one of the things for me, having been in a situation where I couldn't say something I wanted to say, I was wondering where his mind was, where he was. I think my biggest fear in something like that is that the person's already gone, even though their body's still behind. So we were wondering, where is Charlie still with us? He proceeded to get a bit better over the next couple of days, and we heard yesterday afternoon that his children and stepchildren and a couple of grandchildren came in yesterday, and we heard the news that he had been out in the backyard with them, not only walking but playing horseshoes.
And had a Bloody Mary.
So this made us very happy. Joy, I wrote the word gratitude down here, and joy also fits very well. We visited them last evening around maybe 6 p.m. or something like that, and he was standing in the kitchen. This is a guy that couldn't hold on to a walker a few days earlier. And he looked up at us and smiled at us, and he began to try to speak to us, and he could get a few words out. And he hugged Chris, he hugged me, and we hugged his wife, and he had a few words with us, and he tried to start saying something, and he answered yes and no to a couple of things, and he began to try and speak, and I saw him struggling over a word, and I said, I know exactly how you feel. You know what you want to say, but you can't say it. I had the same thing, and he said, yes, to me. And so it was earth-shattering. It was a miracle if I've ever seen one.
He's off hospice now and going to get in-home rehab.
Yep. And we don't, every day is a gift. We don't know how long any of us has, but it looks like he's got a few more days with his wife, and so we're very grateful. And if there was ever a demonstration of the power of the prayer, that was it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
So there are many situations in which we're told, no, you're not getting that pony for Christmas. And the thing is, if there is a deep belief that it belongs to you, or, it doesn't have to be either or, it can be both and, you call upon the power of the circle of practitioners. You call upon those who will stand in agreement with you as to the truth of our being, that that type of miracle, which I've heard some ministers have changed to normical, that type of thing can happen. It does happen. Now, there's a real human process that happens too. That it can get a little frustrating in the waiting. There are times I have heard that some people are like, might say first thing this morning as I drank my coffee, I just wish Christmas would come and go. Be done. There are times it gets a little stressful, right? Because you're trying to do your part and everybody else's part maybe, including God's part, to get your miracle. Maybe. Am I the only one? I explained that in the past as it's where you go to like a 5-star cordon bleu Michelin. I always thought Michelin was tires, so I don't understand what it has to do with chefs. But apparently it's important. You go into this incredibly fancy and 12 paycheck restaurants, and you sit down and you put in your order, and then some of us, as we are doing our prayer work, do the equivalent of chasing in after the server and going into the kitchen and making the food ourselves. Because we wouldn't want to bother the chef, because we don't want to ask for too much, because underneath all of that, there's a very quiet voice that says, yes, but I can do it better. You just stay over there, God, I got this. There's that thing about if God is your co-pilot, you're in the wrong seat. Some of us have lived like that. So there is a requirement to maybe slow down a little bit, to maybe not be the one who has to do the work, and that requires trust like a child. The master teachers told us that unless you become as a little child, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. And to me, that's the trust part. That's the squee part. That's the being grateful for everything that happens. And willing to, you have your little tantrum and then you let go of what you didn't want. There's a video floating around the internet at this time of year of somebody was just doing a little social experiment, and so she wrapped an onion and had her kids open it, and that was their gift. And I think she was expecting a few histrionics and a few tears and everything, but they got so excited about the stupid onion. This is what children are like. Maybe they just knew that it was some assembly required salsa or something. But that is the energy with which we face Advent. The coming of the Christ consciousness into our lives. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Our thoughts of gratitude, thanksgiving, and recognition should ever go up to the divine presence. Like the wise men of old, we too need to be guided by the star of life to that holy place within us, where the little child we are, the child of God, is cradled in the arms of infinite love and wisdom." Let me read that again. That's from the Science of Mind magazine, and that particular piece of writing was published in December of 1999. Our thoughts of gratitude, thanksgiving, and recognition should ever go up to the divine presence. Like the wise men of old, we too need to be guided by the star of life to that holy place within us where the little child we are, the child of God, is cradled in the arms of infinite love and wisdom. Did you notice that last part is written in the present tense? Not will be cradled, not the child we could be or were, the child we are in this moment, that no matter what life has handed us in our true physical childhood, that child we are still believes in the miracle of Christmas, still trusts that they will get up and it will be the one day of the year they're allowed to scream at 3 a.m. and get sent back to bed until 5, but without getting in trouble. are allowed to come down in their jammies and the lights are on the Christmas tree. And they have that picture everybody tries to get is the magical face that says, oh, a miracle happened. I'm willing to bet that Chris and Andy's friend's wife had that face. The grandchildren had that face when their grandfather was all of a sudden drinking a Bloody Mary and throwing horseshoes as if it was no big deal. That is the miracle face we could live with every day. If and when we are willing to surrender the actual work part. See, this is the weird thing for me, and I'm amazed it only took me 45 years to figure it out, so I'm going to share it with you. I've known it for a little while. I will admit, I'm not saying I'm 45. It's okay. Our job is to make our wish list and then send it off into the universe where the law fulfills it, kind of like Amazon. We get specific about what we want to experience. You've never sent a letter to Jeff Bezos saying, just send me something you think I'd like. It won't work. People at Amazon are like, what do I do with this? And now that they're in New Jersey and New York, you know what they're really saying. It's not just, oh dear, what does this person wish? It's a whole bunch of stuff and then forget about it. We make our demand upon the universe and then we leave it alone. That last step of our spiritual mind treatment is release, right after gratitude that we have already got that which we want, whether we can see it in form or not. And so Advent, I only just found out that it was supposed to be a season of penitence and fasting. Has anyone here been fasting? Come on now. Thanksgiving happened. Ain't nobody fasting. They might not be able to eat anymore, but that's not the same thing, apparently. And so you do 2 purple candles and then the pink candle. The pink candle, I always thought meant it was kind of like God answering the question of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Yes, we are. Get out. No, wait, that's not how it goes. That pink candle was, we're almost there, don't lose faith. Because as a child, they taught us that the candle signified stops along the journey for the Magi on their way to Bethlehem. Spiritually speaking, I would suggest to you that pink candle, which is actually also said to represent joy, believe it or not, that third candle is joy. It also represents Mother Mary, because the pink is for roses, which are her flower, apparently. Hers and Ellen's now. That pink is to say, you're almost there, don't give up. And some of us give up just before our miracle, don't we? You get tired sometimes anticipating. You get tired sometimes saying to the doctor, no, really, it's going to be okay. Yes, I'm more than happy to accept the loving help of somebody in hospice, and what I know is that it's already okay. The miracle has already happened. For some of us, the miracle is no longer being stuck in a body that no longer works. For others, it's the miracle of being able to give another hug and say something. I'm not going to try and define what your miracle is. That's between you and the divine self within you. One of the things I learned about Advent is that the Catholic Church has always taught 3 comings of Christ. Did you know that? I'd heard it too. Apparently, I didn't stay in Catholic school long enough to find out about the third one. The first one is the one we celebrate because it's a convenient date and not because we have any historical stuff going on around it. We celebrate the coming of the Christ into physical form on December 25th in Bethlehem, a very long time ago. The last one is the the coming of the Christ in glory at the end of days, at the end of history. But in between the coming of the Christ is how Christ shows up in us every single day. I thought that was like our teaching. Apparently, the Catholics have been teaching it for 2,000 years now. I missed that part. And yet, Meister Eckhart, besides having the wonderful quotes we heard in the meditation, also said, the Word is always being born. Remember, the Word is capital W. It's not just slang from the early 2000s. It's the Logos. It's the Christ consciousness. The Word is always being born, but if he is not born in me, of what use is that to me? If the Christ is not born within us every single day, then who cares what a Palestinian Jew did 2,000 years ago? Who cares? If it's not true now, then he was one of many teachers who have tried to teach us this, and we have not quite got it. And so I suggest to you that this morning is a Christmas morning. We can go straight to that anytime we want. And there's some fun in the anticipation. And so I say happy Advent to all of you. Whether you celebrate it simply by being the Christ in this moment or opening the little doors on your wine Advent calendar, it's a sacrament. You use the wine for the sacraments, right? Or you come together with me now in consciousness to express our absolute trust, the trust of the child within us, the trust of the God truth within us. Go ahead.